Due to recent YouTube updates, comments and likes have become more important than ever. I beg you to please consider doing exactly that. I read every comment that you write me and answer whenever possible and or need. I'm also open to suggestions for future content. My videos are created without the use of AI, so please support your fellow human content creator against clanker slop. Thank you. There. Almost cautiously, you patted the back of Astro, who was covered in ichor sprinkles. The moon toon was shaking. He exhaled out of his mouth, eyes focused on a corner of the elevator. Behind you, Shrimpo had his arms crossed and was sitting in a puddle, a mix of his own and twisted ichor. Only you and Sprout, who energetically was standing before the metal coffin's door, were decently clean still. Like the garden view wanted to specifically punish these two toon boys. Sprout inhaled deeply and said, "We're all still alive? That's great!" Finally he turned around, only to see his group, and a smile didn't vanish. It was almost like he didn't even see the low morale or horror you had gone through. "Give him the tapes," came Astro's shaking voice. "It's better to keep them and buy the good stuff later." Sprout and every other toon knew what happened when Dandy didn't get a supply of tapes. They were what kept something under wraps, away from the operations. His own twisted counterpart. Sprout, this specific Sprout toon, was happy-go-lucky, like the rest, sure, but he also was efficient to a fault. A one-man army. "I hate this Sprout," muttered Shrimpo so quiet only you and Astro could hear him. You threw him a glance of affirmation, and for a split second, the permanent frown on Shrimpo turned into a smile. When the doors opened to a pitch-black floor, Sprout immediately ran into the darkness, leaving you and the others behind. Slowly, you stepped forward, Astro holding tightly onto you as you turned on your flashlight, while Shrimpo had his hands in his pockets. "I hate this floor already." "Me too," you mumbled. You had learned from experience that affirming Shrimpo when he meant... You had learned from experience that affirming Shrimpo, whenever he meant what he said, was the best way to motivate him to do... anything. "Shrimpo?" you said. "What do you think we should do?" Having his ego stroked, the shrimp-headed toon proudly announced, "Nothing! I hate doing things. Let's do absolutely nothing." Sitting down next to the elevator and crossing his arms. "This Sprout thinks he can do everything alone. Let him do everything alone." He then leered at you and Astro and smugly said, "I hate to say this, but have fun, you two." There was amusement in his voice to which you furrowed your brows. What did he mean by that? "Well, Astro," you said finally, "let's see if there's something fun on this floor." "Fun?" He looked at you like a pig-kicked puppy. "How is this fun?" "Let's just look, okay?" He shifted from his left and right foot. "And the twisted?" You shrugged, but smiled reassuringly enough for him to follow you. Your name was Milk. Just Milk. You were a cow-themed toon with a humanoid body. You wore white dresses with black polka dots, and had long enough hair out of which two small horns poked out of. Unlike Astro and Sprout, you weren't the main character, but an often appearing side character. In the background, whenever there was an establishing shot, you would be there just walking in a straight line. Was there a city scene with characters were having adventures, the background was where you were. If all these little instances of you were counted, You in fact appeared in more episodes than Astro himself. As a toon brought back to life with Iker, you were a high-stamina escapist with a very healthy body. Your abilities were based around getting Twisted's attention and then running away from them just long and far enough to keep others safe. Keep their attention on you, while your companions dealt with the Iker extraction. Perhaps that's where Sprout got his main character syndrome. Astro held your hand as the two of you explored the floor, making sure to be just a sprint away from the elevator. Entering what seemed to be a small play theater. There was a dark wooden stage, with a red curtain covering half of it. Metal chairs nearly lined up in the middle. Your footsteps echoed through the quiet hall. It was a little dusty, and the smell of old paper hung in the air. It was surprisingly pleasant, even if a little creepy due to the missing light. "Ooh, wanna explore?" you asked. He nodded but didn't say anything. The two of you walked down a carpeted aisle separating the chairs. Through the glow of your flashlight, you could see dust particles, your movement causing just enough wind to make them dance in the air. With a grunt, you climbed up the stage, Astro quietly humming, seeing your backside raise like that as you pulled yourself further. Heat rose to his cheeks immediately, and he looked away. You didn't notice as you turned around, offering your hand. He took it with all four fists while pulling him up. Stepping towards the curtain and pulling it aside, you were curious as to see what was behind it. Astro just stood there unsure of how to react until... "Costumes!" you said with bright expression. Costumes? His curiosity got the better of him and he quickly approached you, looking past your shoulder, as your flashlight lit up a rack with hanging theater costumes and 2 cardboard boxes with costume props. Without saying another word, you huddled into the backstage. Reaching into the boxes, your companion needed only a moment to be by your side. You set the flashlight on the scuffed wooden floor and angled its beam into a cracked hand mirror you'd dug from the prop box. The reflection bounced skyward, scattering across the ceiling in a soft oval glow that rained back down like pale twilight. The old theater drank it up greedily, shadows deepening at the edges while dust motes danced in the faint light. Astro lingered near the edge of the stage. All 4 of his hands hovered uncertainly, 2 twitching as if they wanted to fidget, the other 2 frozen halfway between caution and courage. He looked smaller in the glow, his crescent face half lit like he was carved out of the night itself. You gave him a small smile and crouched over the costume box. The wood groaned softly beneath your knees, the smell of mothballs and forgotten cloth rising with the dust. Your hand slid through a jumble of faded fabric until you found something soft and semi-familiar under the touch. You pulled out a gray wool hoodie. It seems frayed but still sturdy. Floppy bunny ears dangling limply in the pale glow from its hood. It smelled faintly of old paper and stage dust, but when you pressed it against your cheek, the wool felt gentle, almost comforting too. You shook it out and slipped it over your head. The fabric clung close before relaxing, warming against your fur like a blanket just pulled from the dryer. You tucked the hood until the ears flopped forward, one falling lazily across your brow, the other bouncing slightly when you moved. Next came the cottontail that you found surprisingly quickly, a fluffy ball stitched to a long white band. You looped it around your waist and tucked it snug until the tail sat just above your butt crack. Last were the gloves, gray wool worn thin at the fingertips, but stitched carefully into paw shapes with threadbare pads that had clearly been mended again and again. You slipped them on and flexed your fingers, the fabric stretched tight before softening, the paw pads pressing lightly against your palms. When you turned back, Astro was staring, really staring, his pale half glowing faintly in the dim light, while the dark half of his face tried and failed to hide his blush. Two of his hands fumbled at the hem of his cloak, and the other two clutched his nightcap. Light was the only thing keeping him grounded. You stepped closer, ears bouncing with each motion. "Cute, right?" you teased, holding up a pawed-gloved hand. You gave a little wiggle of your fingers. "Don't I look huggable?" Astro's throat tightened as he tried to speak, but only a shaky sound came out. His eyes darted down, then up, then down again, like he couldn't decide where it was safe to look. It's really cute," he stammered, his voice trembling and quiet. Then softer, almost a whisper. "Too cute." You chuckled and reached out, laying a gentle paw on his shoulder. The paw pad pressed softly through the fabric of his cloak, lingering just long enough to make his muscles stiffen under your touch. "You're too sweet, Astro. But don't stare too long, or you'll make me think you like me." Your voice carried warmth and tease in equal measure, motherly, playful all at once. He nearly dropped his blanket cloak, fumbling to wrap it tightly around himself as though it could shield him from his own feelings. His words tangled and crumbled into nervous stutters. Yoni gave him a smile before turning back to the costume box. "Your turn," you said. "Go on, pick something. Let me see." Astro hesitated, his hands fluttering nervously in the air before finally plunging into the box. He pulled out a slim headband with black cat ears stitched neatly onto it. He set it gingerly on his crown, adjusting it until the ears stood just right against his nightcap. Next came a fabric tail on a band that he wrapped around his waist, fumbling with the knot until it swished behind him in a faint light. Finally, he tucked on a pair of sock gloves, the black fabric soft but stretched, each fingertip stitched with tiny pink beans that looked comically and endearingly real. When he turned to face you, your smile faltered, not from dislike, but from something sharper, hotter, not just cute, not just funny. Something about the way the ears sat perfectly above his pale crescent cheek, the way the tail swished with every nervous twitch of his hip, made heat climb into your face. You blinked, your breath catching for a moment longer than you meant. "Well," you murmured, leaning closer with a slight tilt of your head. "Would you look at that?" You reached out and brushed your paw glove over the beans of his glove, tracing lightly across them. "They suit you a little too well." Astro flushed furiously, all four arms snapping close against his body like he didn't know where to hide them. "You're just teasing," he said quickly, his voice breaking slightly. You shook your head slowly, letting the teasing tone soften to something heavier and genuine. "No, Astro. I meant it. You look good." Better than good. Your eyes lingered deliberately, moving slowly from the ears to his neck. "Let's see if we can find a bell for you." He blushed even harder now, and thankfully, you found one rather quickly. And boldly, you wrapped it around his throat. You took a step back, one more time looking down at him. From the bell, down to where the tail brushed his hip. It's almost too good. The silence stretched, Dust settled around you in the pale beam of reflected light. His chest rose and fell too fast, breath shallow, shoulders trembling under the weight of your words. Your own heart pressed against your ribs, just as hard, but you hid it under a gentle, teasing smile. Finally, you reached up and took one of his gloved hands in yours. The paw pads met the stitched beans in a soft press. Heat slipping between the fabric. "You're my little cat boy now," you teased. Astro's eyes widened, the pale half of his face glowing faintly, then slowly, almost like he was afraid to break something fragile. He leaned in. The bell at his throat chimed once, sharp in the silence. His lips brushed yours in the faintest of touches, hesitant and trembling, as though shaking, asking permission with every breath. You obliged. Pressed closer, deepening it just enough, guiding him with the steady warmth of your paw on his cheek. The kiss lingered, drawing out longer and longer, your heart hammering against your ribs. You could feel every tremor in him, every shaky exhale, every little pause where he nearly pulled back before daring to continue. You teased him once, pulling back just enough for your breath to brush his lips, and then kissing him again, slower this time, deliberate and certain. His cloak rustled faintly when his hands, all four of them, finally settled where they belonged, steady at your waist, brushing lightly against your arm, and one still clutching your paw. The kiss stretched into minutes, warmth pooling between you, the theater fading away into nothing but the soft glow above and the sound of your hearts racing in tandem. It was like you both wanted this for the longest time. When at last you parted, he stayed close, eyes wide, dazed. His cheeks flushed so deeply the glow of his crescent seemed brighter than ever, almost yellow rather than the usual blue. You stroked his cheek softly with your paw, brushing down the edge of his jaw. "See? Nothing to be afraid of." Your voice low, steady, almost motherly. And Astro swallowed hard, his chest still heaving with every breath, but a tiny smile tugged at his lips despite it. One of his hands gave yours the faintest of squeezes, enough to say what words could not. Hey, you reached the end of the video. That makes you part of an exclusive club. Our secret password is Cheap Thrills. Put the secret message in your comment below to tell fellow members you watched the video until the very end. Lastly, before I say goodbye, I would normally shout out my channel members. However, due to losing monetization, I currently do not have access to both channel memberships as well as a list of previous channel members. Nevertheless, I'm eternally grateful to the channel members I used to have, and in the case memberships get reinstated, I hope I'll see you again. Thank you for watching.